message is very, very simple. We want to educate the kids, not indoctrinate them.
She doesn't want these projects in her backyard in Warringah. She wants them in yours.
What's wrong with Australia today?
For me, it's leadership. There's just a lack of leadership.
We should be energy independent here in Australia. We've got everything.
And it's good to see the community come out and really engage in this issue of parental rights.
You only have one vote, but it's very powerful.
Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Commanding the Narrative. My name is Stephen Tripp. Thank you very much for watching, and just remember to like, subscribe and comment as well. We're not live streaming today, but you can comment, and I love reading the comments, so please don't hold back with the comments. But I'm very excited today because this is a man that I've been looking forward to interviewing for a little while now. His name is Matthew Camenzuli. He was always behind the scenes until recently, and he's got quite a story to tell. He built his own multi-million-dollar software company in his bedroom back in 2002, and then he was also involved with the Liberal Party of Australia, and he was on the New South Wales State Executive, and there was a little bit of drama with that. So we will discuss that today. But Matthew, thanks for having us, and welcome to Commanding the Narrative.
Mate, thanks for having me. It's wonderful. I've been looking forward to this too.
Yeah. So a lot of people might not know your backstory. Now, I mentioned that you built this software company in your bedroom back in 2002. What motivated you to do that? Like, what did you have any idea that it was going to be successful, or were you just taking a shot in the dark?
Look, I think I always felt that I wanted to be in my own business. I mean, I've always struggled to be in a situation where I wasn't able to affect my own surroundings, I guess, in my own way.
Yeah.
I guess I've always been a bit of a free thinker. My time growing up, I grew up in Western Sydney. I went to just a metropolitan Catholic school. I guess a lot of my views and values were formed in that space, but also I guess the school that I went to, the brothers were disbanded, and there was some very regrettable things, and I guess I got a deep-seated sense of justice and institutional corruption and those sorts of things there, and I don't know, I was just always inspired to make a difference, to be the master of my own destiny, I guess, and to try and do the best I could to steward and shepherd others as best as I could around me into the sort of the better way of being, I guess, or at least what I thought was the better way of being. And I think so I started a company. I'd worked in a few sort of technology companies prior, and I just didn't like working for other people. So I
no one does it.
No. Well, I think it depends. Like I've had, I try and be the sort of leader that lets people lead themselves as best as possible with just minimal guidance and such. So I think everybody deep down does want to be the master of their own destiny, and I think it's our job as as good citizens to try and help other people as best we can to be the best person they can be, right? So that's something that I've always believed in very deeply. So, that and I guess that was what spurred me on in starting my business.
But I'm sure there's a lot of people trying to start software companies in their bedroom and they don't succeed. What was there something that was driving you inside that you knew you were going to succeed, or? No,
look, I mean, there's always risk, right?
Yeah.
And I like to take calculated risks. I don't think I'm reckless, but I do enjoy a bit of risk.
Yep.
I didn't know how it was going to go, really, and you never do. And it was but by about the fifth year along, I had thought that if somebody had told me how hard it was going to be by the fifth year along, I probably wouldn't have started. So that's not good advice for the kiddies. But in reality, it's a difficult thing to do, and it never gets any easier. You just get more used to the risk, and you get more used to the struggle.
Yep.
But the struggle doesn't change. And if anything, as you grow, it does get more challenging. It does get harder. You do have more resources, but the risk gets higher. So the challenges get deeper. So, but for mine, building businesses, and particularly in the space that I took it. I mean, I was always a technology enthusiast, and I was a little bit of a technology expert, I suppose. I sort of taught myself how to write software when I was very young. I was about 8 when I sort of started.
Oh wow, 8.
Hacking at it. Yeah. I had played around on basic and things. So and it sort of made sense to me. I was the kid that just worked out how to make all the remote controls work when they first came out, and how to make it. I just understood. I still do. I just have this thing where I just get it, and it just makes sense to me. It's it's just the language I understand. So I was never really concerned about the technical side of the business. It was just a natural thing. And I grew up in a household where like my parents were born in Australia, but my grandparents migrated from a place called Malta.
Mm-hmm.
So. A bit of a siege mentality, I think, comes from there, and I don't mind. I don't mind that. It's been a bit like a paratrooper, right? You're always cut off and surrounded. You just get used to it.
Mm-hmm.
My dad was in the building space. He's a builder, and I grew up when I was a kid walking around job sites from the time I can remember. Before it was illegal to have kids walking around job sites.
Yeah, it was the same with my dad, and I think back now, I'm like, how did we get away with that?
Yeah, well, I mean, because the rules weren't ridiculous.
Yeah,
because dads don't want their kids to get hurt on job sites.
That's right. Yeah,
right. So the government doesn't make you any safer. The government does not make you safe. The government's an idiot mostly.
Yeah.
It's just an imbecile, but it's heartless. The government doesn't care. This idea, the government cares for it. It doesn't care, right? It really doesn't. There's no humanity in government. There's no justice in government. It's just an institution. It's a cold-hearted institution, and people believe that that this law or that law is keeping them safe, but they keep forgetting that the people who break laws don't follow laws.
That's right.
So you can make more laws for those people. They're still going to ignore them. They ignore the current laws, right?
Yeah.
So, so this idea that anyway, I walked around job sites when I was a kid, and I understood the building industry reasonably well, and so I just sort of merged the two things. I had a bit of a passion for it too. I mean, it's a cool thing making homes for families, right?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah,
and they're sexy products. I mean, a nice house is a nice thing.
Or building anything. I work in construction. And, building a road or building a bridge or whatever it might be, you can see it from the beginning, and it's basically just a dirt on the ground, and then it becomes this wonderful piece of infrastructure that everyone can use. And same with a home,
Sure.
A family can live in it. But I want to take it back to the software that you created. You mentioned that it took you 5 years to build it.
It's longer than that.
Okay, well,
partnership and a few other things in it as well. And
a
lot of challenge, a lot of difficulty. So, I mean, we built it and rebuilt it in the first couple of years, and then probably wasn't until about 7 years in that we really started to get some good returns. I mean, everybody thinks, Facebook just came from out of nowhere. 2002 was it? Hey, before that, there would have been 5 or 6 years of building and breaking and building and breaking before all that happened. And people don't see that before a software product comes to market, sometimes there's 10 years of work in it.
Yeah,
it doesn't just break out and there it is.
Yeah. So, taking a long time to build a company, I'm sure you learn a lot from that, because it is a process. Success doesn't happen straight away. It is a hard process. There's probably a lot of times you think, I want to give up, I want to stop, but you keep pushing through. How have you taken that experience from building your company into maybe the political realm?
Look, I think it's almost like it's a battle of wills. First, you have to win that battle with yourself.
It becomes like a discipline.
Correct. Discipline is absolutely right. I think also, if you don't have good, sound, solid guiding principles on dark days, which inevitably come, you don't have anywhere to go. If you've got unwavering principles, if you've got strong beliefs and values, they drag you through the difficult times. There's almost something ethereal about that. When you have your purpose and you speak your purpose and you work to your purpose and you do it with purpose, you have the tools to get through the adversity. It's the adversity that's the problem, right? Like, everybody thinks that everybody else has it easier than they do, and nobody does, right? The reality is, from I don't know about the King of England, but down to the person who is currently looking for a job. everybody's got challenges. Everybody's got health issues. Everybody's got family issues. Everybody's got difficult things in their life.
It's almost like Christianity or a religion. They've got core values, core beliefs, and they're unwavering, and that's why they're almost bulletproof, because they have a core belief. You don't necessarily have to be religious to have that. You can have core values that you hold true to, that you'll be unwavering from.
That's right. Yeah, it's a sense of purpose that's bigger than oneself. And I mean, for me, it was, and it is, I guess, the ability to pursue that which I believe in to be right. And having the tools in order to do that has always been important to me. I didn't really consider politics as, I mean, I've always been interested in politics. I was always keen to learn and understand more. I was an avid reader of, even when I was quite young, of political, narrative and different things. And I've always found, things like, the formation of horrendous regimes around the world interesting and terrifying. And I've always found, some of the political quips interesting, sort of the things that Paul Keating used to get himself about doing was hilarious. And, I was inspired by people like, Robert Menzies and John Howard to I liked their particular brand of politics. I grew up in a household, and most of the building industry is that way inclined, because it's about opportunity and reward and success. And nobody. I've never been paid by a poor man. I don't think anyone is ever paid by a poor man. So in order for people to have jobs, you have to have rich people.
That's right.
And it's better that rich people are giving people jobs because they care about the outcomes and the people, than big corporations and institutions giving people jobs because they don't care about anything, right? There's no care in institutions, as I said before.
So you mentioned Menzies and Howard and even Keating. One thing that all those three had in common was conviction. Now, you've been everywhere. You've been everywhere recently. You've been on Outsiders on Sky News. You've been on The Project, but you also wrote an article in The Spectator recently. I'll just bring it up on the screen here now. The title of this article was "Political Cowardice is now is putting our country at risk." Now, you could have used any term. You were mainly describing Anthony Albanese and his leadership. You could have used incompetent. You could have used a whole host of different words. Why did you choose cowardice?
Yeah, well, I think cowardice is the opposite of courage to start with, right? It's a very simple, clear-cut thing. Cowardice speaks to something a lot more. It's a very deep-seated form of weakness. It's guttural. It's primal. And I think it informs very much the sort of nature of a lot of modern politicians, particularly Anthony Albanese. And, what it really speaks to at its core is the flight or fight response, right?
Yeah.
And Albanese runs to flight. It's very clear that he runs to flight. And at a very, very difficult time where we are in the world right now, if we don't have sound principles, sound values, inner strength, a sense and understanding of where we want to go as a people, as a nation, or even as individuals, it's very, very easy to fall into the boring, bland, horrendously dangerous path of least resistance. And in all of my time inside of the political party, certain factions within the party were constantly talking to me about how much easier my life would be if I just went down the path of least resistance and I could get into parliament. I go, I don't care about these things.
Yeah.
For me, I mean, I'm not going to sell my principle for position. And I don't like people who do.
Yeah.
I don't like the path of least resistance. It's the path of least resistance that has got us into this mess. Weakness, a lack of courage.
Yeah, it's funny that the path of least resistance, that was the same line I was getting during COVID. They're saying you should just follow the mandates and you just follow the restrictions. It's the path of least resistance.
Take the path of least resistance.
No, I'm going to stay true to my core values, which we spoke about before. So it comes down to being true to yourself, and then you're unwavering. You can't get these people that will manipulate you in different ways to achieve a purpose. But last week I spoke to a man named Lee Evans. Now he's been heavily involved with the Brexit movement in the UK, and we were discussing the decline of the Conservative Party over there. Everyone can see what's happening in America with Joe Biden. We have our Anthony Albanese here in Australia. The Western world is in this period of political crisis, and there doesn't seem to be any leadership anywhere, really.
Yeah.
How do we address that?
Could I challenge that? I mean, I've been thinking about this a fair bit, and I'm not sure it's the Western world in its totality at the moment. I think it's the Anglosphere is absolutely in the worst place. I mean, look at Trudeau in Canada. I think New Zealand's maybe on its way out, but I'm not entirely sure that what we've got in New Zealand is anything different to the Morrison government. But I'm hoping it's different. Pierre Poilievre, for example, in Canada seems to be mounting a decent resistance and seems to be what we need to see. Yep. But that's a different matter. But the Western world is starting to show some signs in some countries of Europe, because it's also clearly part of the Western world, of the people having stood up and said enough. And we're starting to see in South America something similar, in Argentina.
Yep.
I think people are slowly waking up to the idea that the government doesn't love them, that the narrative is propaganda oftentimes, nonsense, just absolute gibberish. When we're starting to fall for all these narratives and all this sort of stuff that seems on the surface to be caring and kind and loving and nice and the right thing to do and how wonderful it all is. But underneath all of that, the solutions always seem to be communism, socialism, fascism, or authoritarianism. It's nuts.
I don't like being called a conservative. Like, I feel like that's a leftist way of putting someone in a box. I'm just an individual that has certain beliefs. I tend to lean right on most things. But do you feel like the left has really almost tricked the right into falling into different traps? So they'll call you an anti-vaxxer, or they'll call you a misogynist, or they'll call you a racist, or they'll, and we're constantly fighting the culture battle. And I was in a discussion, I was in an event last week, and I was talking to an Indian man, and he raised a really good point. He said the Western world is so consumed with all this gender ideology stuff and culture wars and those sorts of issues. Meanwhile, India's landing probes on the moon with rovers, and they're going out into space and things like that. Why aren't we focused more on big nation building projects here in Australia, like building dams or building a high-speed rail, or addressing the housing crisis, or reducing the debt, those sorts of issues? But we're falling into the left's trap, because they'll just give you a tag. Oh, you're a racist. Straight away, you're like, no, I'm not. And you get lost in that argument straight away.
Well, is it though? The left. I'm not sure anybody knows what that means. This is the problem I have now as well. I'm not sure anybody even knows what these words mean anymore. When I was young, sort of 30 years ago or so, it was the left that believed in free speech, and we're pushing for an absolute position on things like not being able to ask an employee, for example, and I don't think this is right. I think they're right about this, their medical statuses, pushing against things like discrimination. And where they've landed now is positive discrimination in the opposite direction.
Yes. Yeah.
And somehow that the way to fix the problem that, in my view, in Australia is not really a racist country. Australians generally get on, they make fun of each other, have a laugh, larrikinism, sure.
Yeah.
But
you only have to go down to Coogee Beach or somewhere like that and see everyone mingling with each
people
other
get along.
No problem.
People have always gotten along here pretty well. And there's always little issues here and there, but there are idiots from every culture. There are idiots from every background. There are idiots in every faith community. There are idiots in every group. And there are good people in every group.
That's right.
Good people fight each other. Idiots seem to stick together. It is what it is. Idiots can be more vocal. Silliness can sometimes bubble to the top.
I always say if you're trying to look for the negative in something, you'll find it.
Correct.
If you're looking for the positive in something, you'll also find it. So
it
depends where you're. And this is a Marxist ideology. They want to bring down the system, so they have to look at the negatives of the system that we have. And a lot of these issues are imported from America and other places.
I'm not even sure that the people that are saying and doing the things that are doing the damage and the harm, well-meaning as it sounds and it looks, even though that's what they're doing. I'm not sure they're thinking about that. See, what I think the fundamental issue is we've started to move towards, I guess, a society that is driven by experts. It's becoming almost people are like, if you have an opinion on whether something's timber or not, people are going to at some point ask you what your degree or qualification is to determine whether that's timber. I mean, it's becoming stupid.
Yeah.
So what happened to common sense?
Yes.
We have a real issue here because of all of this trust the experts, ask all these people with all these degrees that come from captured institutions. And there's no doubt a lot of these institutions are wanting. They're also counterfeit. Now, we've got a lot of counterfeit institutions. The issue is this. The government sits there and talks about the rules-based order and justice and delivers neither. It locks people in their homes and tells them that they have to shut their businesses and they got to do all these things, right? But how has that got anything to do with freedom in the rules-based order? Nothing. It's terrible, right? That was just stupid. And then they're running around telling everybody about the rules-based order and we've got to stop people like China because China don't understand the rules. Well, neither do they. A lot of the responses that they had to that virus were largely inspired by communist China. I can't see how, having this academic-led, this expert-led, response where you're getting a medical expert looking at the medical problem and ignoring every other problem. Medical experts are not elected as medical experts into those positions. There's a reason we get people who are broadly experienced at life, or should have people that are broadly experienced at life, mature, competent people that have to face a jury of their peers and win seats to represent them. And it's because they're supposed to have judgment. They're supposed to be grown-ups. They're supposed to be able to balance all of those competing interests, whether it be the economy, the people's mental health, the education of the next generation, and how ridiculous it is for a premier to stand in front of the state and say, it is a deadly, deadly virus. I mean, I would have thought a call for calm would have been the more sensible thing. Yep. And that's what used to happen. There'd be a crisis and everyone would call for calm. Mm-hmm. Keep calm and carry on. Yep. We're going to get through this. We fight through this. We're not going to let this beat us. But all of a sudden, no, it's a deadly virus and don't talk to your neighbour or you are a scoundrel and dob in your friends. When was it ever Australian culture to dob in your neighbour?
Yeah, that's right.
This whole idea of not being a dobber, I think, was one of the greatest things about being Australian, right? Like, we don't really like authority very much. We were known for not saluting, and we are the most difficult people to employ in the world.
Yeah.
Australians are difficult people to employ, but we're also some of the world's best innovators. People don't know this. Wi-Fi was invented in Australia. Really? It was invented in Australia. Wow. CSIRO invented Wi-Fi.
Wow.
Right? I mean, you don't have to worry about these taxes and those taxes. If instead of them making it free domain, they actually just charged for every implementation at half a cent, Australia would be making more money than the mining industry, right? Everything's got Wi-Fi.
And they say that we're laid back in Australia. That's true when we're not working, but when we're working, we work damn hard.
See, I think that's another misnomer. Australians aren't really Australians are very success-minded. Most people in Australia are aspirational.
Yeah.
I put it to you this way. The vast majority of people in Australia fall into, actually I think everybody falls into three categories. People who own a house, people who want to own a house, and people who own multiple houses. Everybody in Australia aspires to property ownership.
Yeah.
Or is a property owner. Most people accept that takes hard work and sometimes a bit of luck, sure.
Yeah.
Not everybody can, get there.
Yeah.
There's certain people that I think, just for whatever reason, because of their priorities or because of their circumstance can't. But they try and they want to, and that's the fundamental thing. Well, it's the politician's job. It's our job as interested citizens to help set the sort of environment, the groundwork, to make it possible for them to do that. Not give them a house, quality of opportunity, not outcome, but to make it possible. It's about having the courage to stand up to the vested interest groups, and we need political leaders that are prepared to do that and say, no, mate, no.
You bring up Robert Menzies a lot. You're inspired by him. Yes. You're inspired by the We Believe statement. We'll get to that a little bit. But why did you join the Liberal Party way back when?
I used to complain a lot to friends and family about how ridiculous the Bob Carr government was and how stupid all that was, and I didn't like it. And I did I think I liked most of John Howard's work. I mean, there are a couple of things like with everything, there are a couple of things I probably didn't agree with. I won't go into them, but it's not many. I think one thing that you knew for sure when John Howard was Prime Minister is you knew where he was going to stand on something. and there was a consistency in his purpose and his principle, and he was very good in that space. So, that sort of inspired me into the Liberal Party. And look, like I said, I come from a household of Liberals, but I was always free thinking as well, and did take that interest. So, a family member of mine said, well, look, instead of just screaming at the television or just, screaming at me.
I'll just take you back. You said you were in a household of Liberals, even though your father was in the building industry.
Yeah, that's right.
And
residential home building.
That's what I find in construction. There's a lot of Liberal voters. That's a misnomer that all the Labor voters.
Yeah. The commercial construction side of things, particularly commercial trades, big trades, pretty much all have to be union, right? So there's this idea that because they have to be union that they're Labor supporters. They're not.
Yeah.
They're not. They're in the union because if they're not in the union, they can't get this job or that job. And somehow the unions are there for workers. They're not. They're there to buy super funds and to protect themselves and to go and make industrial relations legislation that legitimizes and strengthens them at your expense, at the expense of the worker. They haven't helped workers in years.
Yeah.
They're a disgrace.
Yeah, they just hide behind their super funds now.
The unions are the world's best. Well, they're certainly Australia's greatest exporter. They export jobs faster than we can sell coal. I have absolutely no time or respect for modern unions. I think we need unions that function. We need unions that when employers are telling their employees that they must do this or that or wear this mask or wear that mask, that the unions stand up and say, nah, boss, I'm not wearing them. I'm not your slave, boss. I'm not your slave.
Yep. Definitely.
And that's what I want to see unions do again.
And you saw Victorians protest outside the CFMEU.
I saw them throw stuff at the windows. Yeah, they were pretty unhappy, and rightly so. The CFMEU is the worst of them, by far the worst of them.
Yeah,
no respect for them at all.
Let's get back to the We Believe statement, because a lot of people might not know what that is. Now, Robert Menzies wrote that in 1954, so not straight after he established the Liberal Party, but pretty soon. A lot of people might not know what the We Believe statement is. What is it? It's 17 points.
Yeah. Well, it's not really a manifesto. I mean, I think it's long enough to be a manifesto, but it's certainly it's a statement of values, a core statement of values. And I think it prescribes the best way for a society to be to promote human flourishing. Because isn't that what we should be working towards?
Yeah.
The very best for the maximum number of people. And that's never collectivism.
Yeah.
It's individuals doing what is best for individuals and other individuals by choice, working together by choice, not by force, for personal gain and profit, and then having a set of values beside that give you a sense of giving back. And that's what the We Believe statement talks to.
And some of these are very simple. We believe in Australia. We believe in the individual. We believe in the rule of law, and so on and so forth.
Freedom of association, freedom of religion, freedom of speech. Freedom of speech. And it was the Liberals at a federal level under Morrison that come up with these diabolical, idiotic speech laws, carrying on about censoring the internet. Look, I don't like seeing acts of physical violence, genuine, explicit violence on anything, and I don't like violence at all generally. And I think we should be as non-violent as we possibly can as a society. I'm pro-peace in that regard, but or an extreme porn, all those sorts of things. I'm not a great fan of these things, right? So the left are happy for you to have some really filthy, explicit, potentially offensive, material on the internet, but they don't want you to have an opinion on the internet. I think that's perverted. I think that is, again, another counterfeit. Everything is counterfeit now.
Yes. Everything.
And the statement of purpose of organisations like, say, the Australian Greens, they're not environmentalists.
No.
They're not environmentalists. They're just, it says it's been perverted. It's been captured. It's not true to its purpose. And I think people are starting to recognize the Teals, another group of people that are not a political party apparently, but act like one, and will support an Albanese Labor government in seats that would be absolutely disgusted at the thought of an Albanese Labor government. So good luck with that. I want to see that go down the path a little bit.
There's a rally coming up in next week on Tuesday down in Canberra. There was one in Sydney previously. It's called the Reckless Renewables Rally. And these are farmers that are protesting because these wind farms and solar panel farms and the transmission lines that are crisscrossing their properties, ripping up their properties. There's people up in Port Stephens and down in the Illawarra that are protesting offshore wind farms, and up in far north Queensland, there's very, very sensitive rainforest and biodiversity corridors that are being bulldozed to the ground to put up these tracks for transmission lines and wind farm projects. The environmentalists are not talking about that. Zali Stegel, who's in my electorate, she's not talking about the destruction. She'll go and advocate for wind farm projects and renewable projects. And then right on her website, it's clear as day. She says on there, I do not support wind farm projects on Warringah's beachfront. So it's okay for people out in rural areas to have to put up with it, but she doesn't want to have to
Not
deal
in
with
my
it.
backyard.
Yeah, that's right.
She says, not in my backyard.
Out of sight, out of mind.
She's a hypocrite.
Yeah.
Look, I think that the most laughable, pathetic force of any force that's grown up, out of all of the forces that have grown up in Australia, the Teals are the most ridiculous. Champagne socialists who really are just an annoying force. I think they'll be tested, and I don't think they'll pass that test. I think the Australians will see through this, and I'm very confident of that. But they will exist until the Liberal Party becomes true to its purpose again. See, the great lie is, oh, everybody's moved to the left now and everybody wants to. They don't. The reason people voted for the Teals was because they were disgusted in what the Liberals had become. I know a lot of people that are, we believe Liberals, that didn't vote Liberal but voted Teal, not because they like the Teals. They don't like the Teals even more, but they voted for them to get rid of the Liberals that they were disappointed in. And that's happened a lot.
You're on the New South Wales State Executive. You're dealing with these people. You're dealing
Well, I was.
with... well, you were...
Expelled now.
Yeah, okay. Well, you were dealing with these people that are Liberals in Parliament.
Yeah.
Do you think a lot of them believe in the We Believe statement?
I think a lot of them believe in themselves. And that's a problem. I think they have it deep down in them. I think some of them are actually very good. We've got some really good Liberal MPs, people like Alex Antic, I think are fantastic. An immense amount of time for his work because he's leading with principle and he's leading with purpose, and he's put his chin out and he's not going down the path of least resistance. He's creating a whole bunch of new resistance, and that's what we should be doing. Let them fall into the path of least resistance that we create. And that's what Alex is doing. He's leading it out. I mean, people are ready to hear it. But, you know, there are a lot of Liberals who do have those sorts of values and beliefs that are a little too nervous about what might happen to them if they were to give voice to those concerns. And if everybody's scared, nobody fixes it. And if none of them are scared, there's nothing to be scared of.
But they're right to be scared because look at the history. George Christensen's out of the party. Craig Kelly's now out of the party. Russell Broadbent just lost his pre-selection. Same with Jared Rennick. If they put their head up and advocate for issues that are important to probably true Liberal, the membership, the rank and file out there, they get their legs chopped off.
Look, the business model's ending. The problem that they've got is now the more and more and more, those people that want to turn the Liberal Party into a professional Teal organisation, the more they do, the more they make mistakes. The more of the public they lose, the lower their vote becomes. So they might be having these silly little victories against the people they really don't like. What they're showing their voters is, we really don't like you.
Yes.
Well, if you hate your voter base, they won't vote for you.
And the people that are meant to be your troops, your rank and file, they're out there handing out how to vote cards.
It'll backfire.
Yeah, it'll
backfire.
They won't do it.
It's not just that. People, absolutely that too. But the membership of the organisation is going down and down and down and down. I'm trying to help fix that. I want to get people who care about Australia to join the Liberal Party, and they should join the Liberal Party.
Well, let's talk about that because you want to reform the Liberal Party.
Absolutely.
It's on your website. And there's two quotes that stood out for me on your website that I want to read out. The first one is, there is a complete lack of respect for competent and talented members and an active suppression of talent. So you're saying there's people that are there, but they're being suppressed. The other quote was, the culture of corruption is in the Liberal Party's DNA. The fact that it is non-justiciable means that there is no recourse for that corruption. So it is entrenched and locked in. The New South Wales division will not allow for pre-selection of good people. So that's what you need to...
Well, that's right. Look, we're slowly breaking the back of that. But the reality of the situation is, and when I say the corruption is in the DNA, I'm not talking about necessarily financial corruption Although I'm sure there are elements in every political party of that, and we see that happens all the time, and it's sad. But but there are systems in place for that. The problem is political corruption, and there's a lot of that. Look, when the majority of members of an organisation think and look and sound and taste like I do, and the people that want to run the organisation think and look and sound and taste like Adam Bant, or worse, you're not going to want to listen to the majority of people, are you? So they want to get in the way of democracy. They want to stop that. They want to rig it so that their mates get in and they continue to do stupid Teal, stupid Week, stupid, and I'm going to say silly Julian Lisa standing up and saying, I support the boys. How does that line up with the We Believe statement, Julian? I ask that question. You're in the Liberal Party. You've got Liberal voters that want Liberal members of Parliament and Liberal representation. You've got a Liberal leader who's saying this is illiberal. You've got Jacinta and you've got Warren, Liberals, prominent Liberals, good Liberals saying, we don't think this is good because it doesn't stand for equality of all people. It doesn't stand for freedom and opportunity and justice or any of those things. And there's Julian Lisa saying, have a cookie, vote yes. Well, go and join the Greens.
Yes.
Go and stand up in a seat that would not have a Green MP or go and stand for Labor in a seat that would not have a Labor MP. Don't warehouse people who will not vote on Liberal things in Liberal ways in the party that is the only hope of the nation. This matters. It's important. I personally would call on Julian Lisa to leave the Liberal Party and go and stand for something else and see if the electorate wants that.
Yes.
Instead of pretending to be on my side and voting against me and making fun of me when I'm not around. Because if you rob the electorate of choice, eventually, one of these days, Western Australian results will start happening in Australia at a national level, in New South Wales, in Victoria. Look, the way Moira Deeming's being treated is absolutely woeful.
Yes.
John Pesutto needs to knock this off. Nobody believes that votes Liberal in any of the rubbish that he's trying to protect. It's junk. It's junk politics. You know, Speakman, I don't mind Mark Speakman. I think he's a very decent, very wise, very clever QC. Why he supports The Voice, though, with all of that thinking, is beyond me. If you don't want to be a Liberal, then don't be a Liberal. If you're ashamed of what the Liberal Party's there to do, then get out. Stop trying to help.
Yeah.
You're not helping. You're just helping us lose. And if that's your intention, then I'm not particularly impressed with that, and I'm not particularly keen to help that continue. So I'm not going to go after them. I'm not going to attack them. I'm simply going to help do what I can to make the Liberal Party the party that it needs to be again, which is the party of Menzies, the party of Liberal We Believe, and basically getting good members in the door so that they can help give effect to that change, because that's what they want.
And you're exactly right, because there are a lot of disaffected Liberals out there, and I was one of them around the time of the 2022 federal election. That's what motivated me to run for a minor party. Now, I'd always been a Liberal supporter. I used to really get nervous at election time when, I'd want to see John Howard re-elected, and, when Kevin Rudd won, it was devastating.
Terrible.
So, I was a strong Liberal, but how they handled the pandemic, I became a disaffected Liberal. And
oh, it was terrible. It was terrible. Yeah. It was pathetic. It was obscene.
But more than that, when I was starting my campaign in Moringa, I had people that were helping me that were in the Liberal Party, or at least talking to people in the Liberal Party, and they were telling me, "Hey, man, they're going to run dead." I'm like, "What do you mean they're going to run dead? They're the Liberal Party. This is a strong Liberal seat. They obviously Tony Abbott lost it to Zali Steggall, but it's traditionally been a strong Liberal seat." They said, no, they're going to run dead.
They are.
There's forces in the Liberal Party that don't mind the Teals so much, and they're not that concerned.
Well, they're connected to Malcolm, I believe, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
And Malcolm is angry with the Liberal Party. That's pretty obvious. And I'm pretty angry with him. I think he was a terrible Liberal Prime Minister. In fact, I don't think he was a Liberal Prime Minister. He was a Prime Minister.
Yeah.
And that's about all I'd say.
Driven by his own conviction, by his own ambitions.
Look, I don't know what he was driven by. I mean, I think he was, who knows, but I know this, he wasn't good for the Liberal Party, in my opinion.
Yeah, okay.
And neither was Scott. I think Scott was worse insofar as Scott pretended to be a solution.
Yeah.
And I'm surprised you with being a bigger problem.
So this leads to apparently the Liberal Party did have Lincoln Parker and Warringah that the members were behind.
Yeah.
Then Catherine Deves got parachuted in very late. It was only in April. The election was in May.
And Catherine's a nice lady.
She's a tremendously nice. I'll defend. I know that some people, have their views about her. I will defend her because she's always been tremendously nice to me.
Yeah.
The first time I met her I was coming off the ferry in Manly, and she's out there handing out her flyers. Yeah. And I was like, this is weird. Where's all the other Liberals around? And normally they have their little posses around her. She's there by herself. Where was her support? The membership didn't want to support her because she'd been parachuted in. Whether she was a good person or not,
that didn't matter.
It wasn't their choice.
That's right. And that's what we tried to stop.
So from doing my research, apparently there was meant to be an AGM that was going to happen and it got delayed during COVID. And that's where Morrison and Perrottet and a few other people stepped in and said...
Well, no, actually, let's go through that. So I did sue the Liberal Party on a couple of occasions, and I also defended the Liberal Party on a couple of occasions.
With your own money?
Or with my own money.
Yep.
And I asked for nothing in return. And I asked for nothing in return. This is not about me. If it was about me, it's about Australia. Mm-hmm. It's about the Liberal Party being the only party that has any hope of governing and pulling Australia out of this malaise that it's in. And I couldn't stand by. I was given an opportunity to move the needle, and I wasn't going to stand by and leave the needle where I found it. So I kicked it down the street.
Yep.
And that's what has to happen. We need more political courage in that space too. And I'd call on everybody who can do something to do something. In any case, we went to court 3 times over local government stuff. There were certain elements of the party that are very focused on local government. I'm not even convinced why anybody spends so much time thinking about it. It's a subset of the state government anyway, and I don't like how people who've come to the Liberal Party simply to be involved in local government should probably leave the Liberal Party right now, would be my suggestion.
There's a lot of money there, and I spoke to a former mayor. I had lunch with him, and he's quite notable. And I asked him the question. I said, "Do you want to be mayor again?" He's like, "Hell yeah!" He's like, "Do you know how much money I'm in charge of?" So I mean, there's those sorts of incentives.
There's incentives. There's all sorts of reasons why, but look. I think it's important. But I don't think the political parties should be burning themselves down over local government. That's not what the general public expect of a political party to be focused on, right? Yep. People think the Liberal Party's there and the Labor Party's there for state and federal government. They don't really think about council. And the fact is the Liberal Party spend most of its time and most of the problems inside of the party and most of the corruption around the party is all around local government stuff. It's how deals are paid inside of factions. It's how, people see it as the wrong pathway to this and that. There's problems. In any case, I defended the Liberal Party and won and got costs against 1 member of State Executive and 2 councillors.
So you defended the Liberal Party?
I joined on the side of the Liberal Party. So they were being sued and I joined on their side because I was of the view the Liberal Party was going to submit and not fight that. They were going to let it through, wave it through, get some kind of deal, and then use that court as the excuse, which is exactly what the sort of things that they do. So I said, no. I'm joining on the side of the Liberal Party. We're going to stop this dead. And then there were a whole bunch of council areas that the Liberals didn't end up fielding in because they didn't get their own way. And that's a problem, right?
That is a problem.
But good. We should do more of that. And I'm very concerned about the Liberal Party's involvement in some local government areas, and I don't think they should either be involved or make sure the people that are there for the right reasons, not because of some silly factional game or worse. And I'm not going to go into detail. However, we then went on because Alex Hawke and Scott Morrison and a bunch of other people had confected this plan to essentially sack the state executive and then replace them as a body of administration because they were going to miss an AGM or something. Got all this legal advice and all this nonsense and a big mission ensued. Again, I went, you know what? This doesn't smell right.
Isn't
I don't
that
like
funny?
this.
A very similar thing just happened with one of the minor parties.
Yeah. Well, I just said, I don't like this. This is a nonsense, right? It's a big scam. Here's what's going to happen. I'm going to take this to court and we'll go and ask the judge whether the judge thinks that, what their legal advice is saying is right. And it happened to be wrong. So I saved the state executive. This is the state executive that voted to throw me out of the party. I saved all of them and they voted to throw me out of the party.
So they voted to throw you out afterwards.
After I saved them, all of them individually, in their positions. Yeah, because that's the sort of nature of politics.
So Morrison wanted to dissolve the state executive
to dissolve it.
And then just take it over?
Put in an administrator And they said that they'd put the current executive back as administrators, which they weren't getting their way with that executive. So I was expected to believe there's a guy inside of the party. I won't mention his name, but that drafted up some rubbish plan, which was a rubbish plan. It was a rubbish plan, and that rubbish plan was to basically have the state executive dissolved and then reinstituted as a panel of administration. Everyone that was giving all the trouble, that was not giving Scott Morrison what he wanted, were going to be reinstated in this new panel with all the same, roles and responsibilities. Rubbish, nonsense.
And this is all about Alex Hawke and...
It's about Scott Morrison getting the candidates that he wanted into the seats that he wanted them with Alex Hawke, because when you don't have political talent, you have to stack in order to get somewhere. So what does stacking mean? It means getting the numbers in that you want, because it's all a numbers game. It's all about votes and winning votes. And if all you're good at is stacking shelves and stacking things, branches and whatever else, and you want to do silly things like, I don't know, tell Novak Djokovic that he can't play in the Australian Open or whatever else that was so clever that they did, if that's the sort of talent and courage that you bring to the fore, you probably need to stack your way through, right? You probably need to just jam numbers in. So to them, it was about who was going to control Parliament in the next government. It had nothing to do at all with who was going to win elections and seats. And we saw that because they lost, and they lost badly, and they need to listen to the members. And if they don't listen to the members, they're going to lose and lose badly again.
Yes.
Right? And that's the problem that they have. And they're starting to recognize it, but we're not quite there yet. We're getting there. But then the final court case, because that one saved the executive, was when Scott Morrison...
So that was in the Supreme Court and you won?
That was in the Supreme Court and I won.
Yeah.
The last case went straight to the appeal court on urgency, was to stop Scott Morrison putting captain's picks across Sydney and ignoring the rights, the wishes of the membership who pay their money, who go out on polling day, who do the work.
Mind you, this is early April. Yeah. The election's in May.
That's right. And these people understand their own area. See, the problem is when you pick somebody up from one part of Sydney that has no connection to another part of Sydney, let's say West Pennant Hills, you pick somebody up who comes from West Pennant Hills, put them in Parramatta and say, that's a Parramatta person. They're a Western Sydney, but no, they're not. West Pennant Hills and Parramatta are not the same place. Yeah. And Parramatta is an area that on marriage voted 70% no or 60% no on marriage, which is an anathema to the parts of the moderates. Oh, terrible people they are. So they look down on the people of Parramatta because they're just not as progressive as they should be. And they voted, I don't know, 60, 70% no on the voice. The Liberal Party the Liberal Party could win Parramatta. The Liberal Party could win McMahon. The Liberal Party could win Werriwa. The Liberal Party could win all of these seats because there's a lot of aspirational, decent Australians in there. It's just that the Liberal Party don't want those people to vote for them. Because who do they want to vote for them? The people who vote teal. And then who else? Nobody else. That's who they want. That's who they want to associate with. That's who they want to be. That's what they think they are, and that's who they want to represent. And the fact of the matter is those people have turned their back on the Liberal Party, and probably until the Liberal Party goes back to its core values, it doesn't come back. So I sued Scott Morrison to try and get locals who fit the character of their area, who were people of principle, people of substance, people who could win a selection. If you can't win a selection of the people in your area, you can't win a general election.
Of course. Because
it is genuinely a QA system. It's a system of saying, okay, I'm a Liberal from the area. I'm a Liberal voter. Present me a candidate. I'll vote for that candidate. That's the person who I want to represent me. That's what's happening. And you do that in aggregate. You ask all the people in the area, who will you want to represent you? And when you do that process, you're going to get the best quality person who fits the majority of people that vote Liberal in that area and therefore gives you the very best chance of winning that seat. And those people will advocate for things that matter to the people that are voting for them. They're not going to advocate for what their latest power broker told them to do. They're not going to advocate for, what Simon or other people around the place want them to do. They will advocate for what their community want them to do, whatever community means, but the people around them, their own area, their own seat.
Their electorate. They're going to represent their electorate.
See, yep. I was in a hard lockdown area and I was being told by everybody how wonderful they're handling the lockdown. I'm sitting there saying, well, I look at the terrible Dan Andrews. The terrible Dan Andrews, I got helicopters over my head too.
Yep.
And the Liberal Party copped a flogging through those areas, and rightly, justly, because people that vote Liberal are not Labor voters and they're not collectivists generally, and they're not socialists generally. So what Dan Andrews did in Victoria, he's going to get rewarded for it, because people who are, sitting in public housing on welfare potentially, not having to go open their cafes and those sorts of things, don't mind being in lockdown. Public servants don't mind being in lockdown. Public servants don't mind being in lockdown.
Yeah.
People who work in big corporations that are, getting to work from home and maybe not necessarily worrying too much about this and that, it was quite a slow period. They don't mind being in lockdown.
Well,
but they're Labor voters.
For a lot of people, it was a holiday.
For sure. Yeah. And they're Labor voters, right? So the Labor voters rewarded that. They're like, oh, great. Liberal voters were disgusted by it. You're supposed to protect my rights to my small business. You're supposed to protect my property rights. You're supposed to protect my rights as an individual, as a free-speaking human being, to have opinions, to have beliefs. Yep. And that's that.
Yep. So obviously people within the Liberal Party could have seen you doing this, spending your own money to go to the High Court. Did you receive any sort of support for what you were doing?
No. I mean, I received financial support. No. But
even like a pat on the back saying, go get them.
Oh, sure. I got a lot of quiet support. I even got some noisy support, and I've got a lot of friends and a lot of members. And we went from, our movement in the party went from having a couple of people on the executive to a lot of people on the executive. And there's an AGM coming up, and I expect it's going to get even more people on the executive.
Yeah. Okay.
Because people have had enough. They've had a gutful. They're done.
One thing I want to talk to you about, and I know we're getting towards the end now. I want to take it back to similar to where I was at the time. As I said, I was a strong Liberal supporter. Then I became a disaffected Liberal. There was a lot of them out there. We saw protests in the streets, protesting the pandemic. The media would have you believe it was only like tens of thousands of people. The people there would tell you it was hundreds of thousands of people. The one in Canberra, they say it could have been potentially
700. I heard 550.
Yeah,
whatever it was.
Some people say it was 1 million people. Yeah. Whatever it was. Now Clive Palmer's out there and he's saying the UAP have 80,000 people that have just signed up to the United Australia Party. And obviously all the minor party, the conservative minor parties saw an influx of new members and new candidates and new very, very good people. I've met a lot of them. I think now in looking back, we potentially made a mistake by abandoning the Liberal Party. Would it have been better if all those people, instead of joining those minor parties, joined the Liberal Party instead? Okay, look,
I mean, everybody can only make the sorts of decisions that they see fit at the time, right? Like with the information that they've got. So, firstly, I don't think anyone can beat themselves up for any of this. But what I think is this, and what drives me, right now, there are two parties that could form government in Australia. One of them is a Labor Party, the other one's the Liberal Party. That's that. Everything else, look, the Libertarians might be able to move the needle in some areas, which is great. One Nation might be able to move the needle in other areas. Well, that's okay too, I suppose. UAP may be able to move the needle in other directions, but you're not governing. It's going to be a long time before any of that can form government. So to have the maximum impact on your life in the quickest possible time, and on Australia in the quickest possible time, and I hate to say it, is take the path of least resistance. Get in the Liberal Party, right? It really is the easiest way to affect change and help us inside of the organisation drive the change through the organisation. It is simply a numbers game. The more good members that believe in the Menzies We Believe statement, that don't want teal-type policies, that don't want green policies, that don't want Labor policies, that aren't pro all of those silly bad things, the more of those people that get in and get involved in the Liberal Party directly, the quicker we are going to change Australia, and it is just that simple.
Can it be done?
Yes, of course it can. Of course it can.
So that's what you're focused on now.
Yeah.
Now, but why? Like, you've been a success. Like,
sure.
We're sitting here on your beautiful boat.
Sure.
You could sail off into the sunset. You kicked off the executive. You could say, well, screw you guys. I'm going to just,
like Cartman, I'm going home.
Yeah, that's right. Screw you guys. I'm going home. But you're not. Yeah. You're sticking around.
Yeah.
And you're saying no.
Because Australia.
And similar to how we started building your business.
Because Australia.
It took a long time for you to do this.
That's right.
Yeah.
Because Australia. Because I have kids. Because I have friends and they have kids. Because I have family and they have kids. Because this could be, again, the greatest nation in the world. It's a great country, right? But it's slipping. You woke up yesterday and you realised that we're not making anything anymore, that we're beholden to all these other groups of people, that, we're now getting Queenslanders getting told that their air conditioning is going to be switched off automatically because there's not enough power in this greener, cheaper energy solution that's greener and cheaper and it's more reliable, except I've never been told I have to turn my air conditioning off before. And my power bills were not as high and they weren't going up all the time.
Yeah.
And my petrol prices and the cost of alcohol and cigarettes and food and everything else. And I don't care if you don't like smokers. I'm a smoker and I don't care, right?
I don't have any problem.
Yeah, no, I'm not talking about you, but people, you've just got to get over this idea that I'm going to keep you safer. I don't smoke already. Look, you leave me alone, I'll leave you alone. How about that for a deal?
Yeah.
And what is it with the government deciding what is morally right and wrong anyway? I thought a lot of the people that were more on that sort of harder left side of the world that love the big government and everything else are atheists, or they hate faith bases, they hate community bases and all those sorts of things. Well, if that's true, why are you turning the government into a religion and a moral code? Ridiculous. Knock that off. Knock it off. What we need to do as a people is we need to determine that we want to live in the greatest country in the world again, and just make that happen. And of course it can happen. Look, it might upset some people, but the reality of the situation is this. A couple of people, a couple of 100 years ago, came out on a few ships. They landed in a place that had, looked like a barren desert, salt water, whatever else, thought, this isn't very good. They moved up the way a little bit, said, hang on a minute, Farm Cove, they called it.
Yeah.
And from that, a couple of 100 years later, they created all of this. And they did that with not much.
No.
So if they could get to the point where we have all of this with not much, surely we can get into a better place with all of this.
Yeah.
So of course
people have to get involved.
The only way.
Yeah.
The only way. But if you get involved, you'll get returns.
So you were on The Outsiders on Sunday, and it was a very good performance, but you were asking people to head to your website and to sign up and put their email in so they can stay up to date with everything that you're doing, because you're doing a lot of work to exactly what you're saying, to stand up for everything that you're trying to achieve, and to reform the Liberal Party and get good people in the party and get good members in Parliament as well.
Yeah.
So, for these people that are going to sign up to MatthewCamenzuli.com, what can you give them? What guidance can you give them?
Look, I think getting into the political party space it's very, very important. If you're angry, if you're upset, if you're hurting, if you think things just aren't right, if you want to be a part of the change, then you have to really be the change that you want to see.
You have to get involved.
You've got to, and if you don't, then you can't complain when somebody else didn't fix it. I think we all want somebody else to fix it for us, and it's lovely, but it's not going to happen.
Yeah.
Don't sit there all comfy on the couch and go, well, somebody else will fix that. I mean, if your kitchen caught on fire, would you try and put it out, or would you just let it continue to burn and call the fire brigade? First, I think you'd give it a crack, right?
Yep.
So the very first thing you've got to do is get involved. So come to the website. We will be able to help you find your way through navigate the maze that is the Liberal Party. I think we can do that for you. And it's not straightforward, but it's not impossible. And we'll keep you informed, and we'll do everything that we can to help you affect the change you want to change.
Because I go to a lot of groups, a lot of freedom groups, a lot of political groups, and there's people that have given up on the Liberal Party, but your main message is there's still good people involved in the Liberal Party.
Great people.
Great, but you need to get involved yourself.
That's right.
Because if you don't support the good people that are in there, and good people like yourself that are on the outside at the moment, but still trying to
pressing in,
reforming the party, if you don't get involved and support yourself and other people, then what hope do we have?
Well, that's the thing. I mean, a big part of pre-selections, the most important part of a pre-selection is that you are picking who it is that's going to represent you before the public even get to have a say. So that's very important, right? Your voice becomes a much bigger voice in a smaller group of people. And you're watching it in the primaries in America. All those people who get involved in the primaries, they get to determine who the presidential candidate is, right? That's what that is. Before the public get to vote, you get to vote.
Yep.
And you get to put the people in Parliament that you believe are going to represent you. And you're going to help us to ensure that democratic process is enshrined in the party, because by weight of numbers shall we win.
Yeah.
Politics is a numbers business. And they don't want you to show up. They don't want you to be there. But we do, and Australia does. So get up, go to the website, get your details through. I mean, we've always got a lot of inquiry. We will get through to each individual person. It does take some time. We're not a massive organisation yet. We're working on that. It is happening.
Yep.
We will get through to you and we will help you.
So the main message: get involved, build the team, fix the Liberal Party, and hopefully, fix Australia.
That's exactly right. Correct.
Yeah. One final question, just to finish off very, very quickly. If you can invite 3 people to dinner, living or dead, who would they be?
3 people to dinner. 3 people. Probably Robert Menzies, right? Yeah, I'd have Robert Menzies. I think I'd have Tony. Tony Abbott.
Tony Abbott.
Yeah,
Okay.
Yeah.
Yep.
Look, Tony's a very clever guy.
Yeah.
And he's an excellent conversationalist.
Okay.
And the third person, that's a really tough question. Who would be the third person? I've got a huge number, but I'd have to say right now, I think for some clear cut through, I'd say Jerry Harvey.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, he's a pretty cool guy.
Yeah.
You know, and he's an interesting character. He built it all up from nothing, and and he's got a practical sense of things. So I think he's a great Australian.
Yeah.
And I'd love to. I reckon that would make an interesting conversation.
That would be a fantastic conversation. But this has been
end up with the wrestle on the floor. Probably everyone's bashing each other up. No, it'd be great.
Well, this has been a fantastic conversation. Thankfully, we're not wrestling on the floor. But thank you very much for joining me on Commanding the Narrative, Matthew.
Oh, thanks very much for having me, Stephen. It's been great.
Great. And everyone watching, please share this out. It is very important. I say it every single time to share this out. We'll also be releasing clips on Instagram and Twitter if you want to head over to there and follow us. But share it out, like it, and please do comment. I do like to see the feedback. It's very informative. Whether it be negative, it's mostly positive, which is good. So that's helpful as well. But get active as well on our podcast and our social media. So thanks everyone for watching, and thank you, Matthew.
Stephen, thank you.